Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris and welcome to another LEGO Star Wars mock review, the show where I review every single one of the custom LEGO Star Wars models that you can find on brickvault.com, which is a really fantastic website where mockers can actually publish instructions and sell them for some of the most intricate and complex LEGO builds, many of which you can see right here hung up in my own collection. And one example of this is, if we come over here, the ATTE, which is the Brickvault Walker right there, proudly displayed next to all of the other currently available LEGO Star Wars ATTEs out there. But today we are going right into the Clone Wars era. This is the Coruscant Police Gunship. Now, interestingly enough, we did actually get an official LEGO set of this police gunship all the way back in 2014, when LEGO was actually making LEGO Star Wars sets about the Clone Wars on a fairly regular basis. You can actually see the official LEGO one all the way up there, and this surprisingly does use some somewhat similar building techniques, although it ultimately is a much more intricate and detailed model, which you can see right here. Now, a lot of these sets are a little bit fragile, and I do want to have that as a bit of a disclaimer. These are really more made for display and not play, which means it is sometimes very frustrating to put them together or just to simply carry them around. But I am happy to report that for the police gunship, this is probably one of the most stable mocks you're going to see on the series. And you're about to find out why in the review. And so without further ado, let's just jump right into it. I'll be not only reviewing this, but doing a direct comparison next to the official LEGO set as well.
And that's, I think, the perfect way to start this off.
So on the left here we have the official LEGO set version of the Coruscant Police Gunship released in 2014, and on the right here we have the Brickvault version, which just came out, I believe, a year ago or something like that. Very recent model because it does use a lot of modern pieces and building techniques, and here you can see that despite having a lot of differences, there are some pretty striking similarities to them, which, especially if we turn it to the back, you will notice they use the same exact piece on the back, albeit in different colors, which was the kind of large boat hull here. Now, immediately you can see that the Brickvault model is a lot more fragile than the official one. Obviously, the gun just kind of fell off there, but there are a few other things about this that are a lot more fragile, although again, unlike many of the other Brickvault models, this is a lot sturdier than most. So the way I'm going to frame this review is I'm going to set the official LEGO set aside for now, we'll kind of let that one fly away, and focus our attention on the main model in particular, just to start with, and I'll give my general review on the way that the set comes together, specifically the building process, the building techniques, and the overall aesthetics of the model and how good it looks compared to the actual vehicle in universe. Then we'll bring over the official LEGO set and do some quick comparisons at the end of the video. So here is how this model works. To play with it, there's only a few things that you can really do, although it's still more than most of the models. So for instance, as you can see, what you need to do to put it into flight mode is just manually rotate the wings here, so you can kind of have it be swooshing around like so. Unfortunately, to land it doesn't really land on this. You do have to close that up manually and put it down. And there is no way to retract the landing struts on the back here. Despite them actually being hinged, it actually is held together in a very clever method, which actually forces you to lock it in with a pin and bar connection here. So these are actually pretty tightly locked in. If you leave it like this for a long time, or if there's a lot of weight put on it, it will just break this off, but as long as you don't press too hard, it's generally just good to go. Now, of course, these sides can be opened like so, so you can first, some pieces breaking off here, but you can actually first open the top and bottom of them like so you can do that. And it's actually really cool because you have a bit of a staircase here, so when this is in the landed position, you can imagine that minifigures are walking up and down the little bit of ladder here that allows you to get up to the main cockpit, so that just is an extra little added bit of realism. Unfortunately though, you do have to be very careful and close both of these sides at once because it does fit in an interlocking pattern. If you were to close one first before the other, you would not be able to actually fully close it. Now let's kind of take a look at how it works here. You can open these up and you've got the same kind of ladder staircase type thing going on in this direction as well, so it's quite nice to have that be symmetrical on both sides. One detail that kind of surprised me being included on the interior was the addition of some details of what looks to be like a hatch door here with a lock. This obviously does not function as a real door, and the actual build, it would be nearly impossible to actually get that to open up given the confines of the model itself, but it's actually really cool how they actually did manage to work in interior detail detail, this does actually directly lead to the cockpit, which is very cool, although thankfully it does also fully hide a fully Technic structure and beam running through the center of the model, which does help make the model a lot more secure, but of course they did have to make the door be permanently closed just because there is a Technic beam in the way. Now moving alongside to the front of the model here, the cockpit itself can be opened up, so let me demonstrate exactly how that works. This just simply ratchets upwards like so. You can see it's mounted on 3 different classic droid arms, and inside is room for 2 different characters to be seated, much like in the official build. So you can put 2 different shock troopers or Coruscant security police officers right in the center there, and that is a really good way to set things up. Then you can just close this all the way down and you'll be good to go. It may not be as smooth as the official LEGO set, but it definitely does the trick, and having the cockpit be fully brick built really allowed the builder to flex the mastery over different types of pieces here, because this just looks really good as a very realistic cockpit for this vehicle. Of course, the searchlight on the bottom here can be moved up and down based on the hinges. Nothing too fancy going on there, but it is nice. And if you are careful with them, you can actually rotate the guns here, although you really have to kind of apply quite a lot of force to it. You can see here I'm really trying to push this here. That's just because of the nature of the way that this is set up, but it just definitely is not one that you probably would want to be messing around with too much. Of course, you can angle just the very base end of this gun as well, although that does give you some awkward angles like this one here. So honestly, it's best just to keep it front unless you want to angle it for a particular scene. Then I would recommend adjusting this piece, but then in that case you do have to be very careful with how you adjust everything in general, because there's a lot of clutch power between those 2 pieces. Otherwise though, there really isn't anything else you can do with it. It absolutely is more of a display model rather than a play model, which I'm totally fine with. I am not buying Brickvault MOCs to play with them, I am buying them to actually put them on display and hang them up in my collection. So that is what exactly I want to get out of this. So there are a couple of things that I definitely feel like could have been improved here. This definitely could have just used a platform across the bottom, because now if you push down on them, they do tend to just break off, and I feel like that could have easily been mitigated by just using a 2x4 plate and putting it on the bottom there. Other than that, the building techniques are actually really interesting. If you take a look at exactly how this is constructed, while it may seem simple at first, there are a lot of very surprising techniques being used here. Chiefly in the main cockpit, which actually uses a very clever studs on the sides building construction to actually get the framework of the black cockpit there, but also in the way that the top gun turrets are designed here. You can see they're utilizing a lot of the studs on the side techniques, plus a lot of nice interior engine detail. And of course, even in the Star Wars universe, you have red and blue police lights, so that is pretty funny to see as well. Now obviously, probably my main issue with this in terms of stability are the guns just very easily falling off as you move it around, but again, I will have to say that this is a lot more playable than most of the other Brickvault MOCs. I can literally just pick it up and swoosh it around, which is very nice. Sure, I shouldn't probably press in too much on the actual gateways here, because then that will happen, they will just break off, but as long as you do not put your pressure on the actual side gateway, and just hold it from the back here, you can squeeze the back as hard as you want and it will stay put. So this is a great way to play with it and swoosh it around. You also have some great studs on these side building techniques for the back. I guess these are the wings or whatever you want to call them on the back here. Not really sure what these are supposed to be in universe. I guess they add to the aerodynamics and cool factor of it. And all in all, I really do appreciate the amount of detailing that went into it. One of my favorite pieces aesthetically is probably the way the front cockpit is made, where you can actually see the different layering of the outer carapace of the actual gunship itself, forming the inner layer almost like an air intake into the cockpit itself, which is a very cool look, and I love the way the different angles come together to achieve this setup. And so, all in all, that probably about sums up my main thoughts on this particular build in general. A bit of a weak build in the back here, which does angle the landing gear at a cool angle, but definitely does not make it the most posable and flyable. But overall, it is a pretty stable vessel. Sure, there are a few quirks like that, as well as not being able to press in too tightly on the doors here, and some other bits and pieces that fall off easily, like the front guns. But other than that, this is a really well-built model, and probably one of, if not my favorite Brickvault model in terms of balancing play functions as well as stability and being able to swoosh it around. Maybe that prize goes to the TIE Brute, which you just reviewed, but this is a close second. But now it's time to bring in the official LEGO set and talk about who did it better. the official LEGO set or this? Now, I do want to preface this by talking a little bit about cost. If you want to purchase the official set today from Bricklink, be prepared to fork over $100 just because of how rare the set has become, mostly because it included the very sought-after Phase 2 security clones, which haven't really appeared in any other LEGO set. That being said, the set itself is still very rare to actually be able to pick up on Bricklink, but of course, when it released, it wasn't even that expensive at all. I believe adjusted for inflation or pricing it closer to what it would be in today's terms, it would be $60 to $70, which isn't too bad for a gunship of this quality. Now, of course, this model is a lot more dense and part heavy. Despite there being some similarities in the builds, this obviously takes a lot more pieces than this one, and as such, it cost me around $100 just to build this brand new for the pieces that I got off of Bricklink. Which, to be honest, wasn't that bad for a Brick Vault model. Most of the black and gray pieces were not too expensive. Prices did get a little bit higher in the dark blue pieces, but just keep that in mind in case you want to put it together. And as many of the Brick Vault models are, the instructions were professionally done and really made you feel like you were building an official LEGO set, which is one of my favorite things about buying mock instructions off of Bricklink. But now it's time for some direct comparisons. So one of my favorite things about the official LEGO set is the way the cockpit works. As you can see here, everything is hinged on a Technic mechanism, which makes this mechanism feel incredibly smooth and very stable when you're opening and closing it. There is not any danger of things breaking off or falling apart, and of course, best of all, you can actually see on the inside, so if you had minifigures displayed on the inside of the vehicle, you could actually see them flying through directly. Now, unfortunately, the transparent red cockpit does not feature in the set. If you actually watch the episodes that this appeared in the Clone Wars, it is kind of debatable what color exactly the cockpit is. There were many variants that used just a transparent black windscreen. Maybe there were some due to the lighting that had transparent red, but for the most part, they did actually look like this transparent black. So I understand why they just went with plain black for the build, although obviously the cockpit is all for show and you cannot see inside of it. The other way that this works is that because it's so heavy, as you open it up, this just kind of does tend to droop downwards. It's not quite as satisfying to open and close as the other mechanism here, although despite it being working basically the same exact way, I think that the point for being able to easily open the cockpit goes to the actual official LEGO set, which does so in a very nice and seamless manner. Now obviously though, there were some trade-offs to that, because let me just actually fix our landing gear here, which have broken off again. Again, very frustrating the way that these are mounted here, but as you can see, there were a few compromises because the incredible amount of shaping work that is done on the MOC version from Brick Vault, which you can see the air intakes here, some really cool shaping being used, is basically non-existent on the official LEGO set. All it is pretty much the cockpit, and then you don't have anything else. Sure, you have some hints of the actual vents being used with this kind of panel piece being used here, but it is few and far between, and obviously the shaping of the Brick Vault MOC is a lot better. That being said, again, more trade-offs and pros and cons. One thing I really like is that when you pick up the LEGO set, the winglets automatically adjust to actually go into flight position. You don't have to manually adjust it because they actually do just fall into place due to gravity, which is very nice. And of course, to land it, even if it is in flight position, as you just saw, you just plop it down, and there you go, it lands perfectly fine. This one, on the other hand, when you fly it up, you do need to adjust these outwards. I'm going to stop putting this on because it's getting very frustrating having this just continuously fall off. But as you can see, you do have to manually adjust the winglets here, which is not too annoying. I mean, obviously a lot of official LEGO sets do require that, but it is just one extra step to actually get this into flight-ready mode, and it certainly is very, very satisfying, literally just picking this off the ground and allowing the wings to fall into place into flight mode just like that. Now, of course, on the official LEGO set, there was a little bit more storage space. Not only did you have this main panel which opened on the front here, which you can see kind of the interior here, but you also had a panel here which actually was able to deploy probe droids, which was very fun. I kind of wish that they managed to include a feature like that on the Brick Vault model, although of course there's a lot less space because this one is actually a lot better proportioned than the original LEGO set. There is a lot of effort that went into actually ensuring that this model was minifigure scale, and I do applaud that effort because it definitely does look better proportioned and better built overall than the official LEGO set. And so that about sums up this look at the Coruscant Police Gunship. I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are on how this stacks up to the official LEGO set model. I definitely would actually recommend this model from BrickVault. I won't be recommending all of them because, as you will see throughout most of the reviews, there's going to be a lot more issues as we get into different vehicles. I'm kind of starting off with the ones that are the easiest / built the best. So this I would recommend. It is very easy to swoosh around without things falling off, minus the guns, which are frustrating to put on, but of course you could just change up the building technique there. However, if you do want a fully playable thing, this is probably the best one to get because the official LEGO set is the most playable, so it really just depends on what you're looking for. One thing I forgot to mention is that you also have this kind of landing gear here, which you can just push upwards and then fold into the ship itself. So you've got some extra things happening with the official LEGO set that the actual BrickVault model does not have. But overall, you can see the difference between these two models right here. I do think that the BrickVault one is just a better representation of the vehicle in general, but of course that does come with a lot of compromises. The main thing about models like these is that they prioritize aesthetics over play and stability. So if that's your cup of tea, then that's great. And I do actually like having these models to compare against the official LEGO sets because it's just two very different ideologies in terms of building the same LEGO model. But with that, we have summed up our look at the BrickVault Police Gunship. Alright, and with that, we have summed up our look at the Coruscant Police Gunship MOC. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of this model? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? And have you built it yourselves, or are any of you considering buying the instructions for it after seeing this review? Again, the instructions are linked in the description below. I certainly had a blast putting this together, and I can't wait to build more BrickVault Star Wars stuff. Thanks so much for tuning into this video, and bye-bye for now.